Hello, this is Danny Raymond, the voice behind Ray's Guide. In my prior video on how the Hull C would rework the entire concept of logistics in the verse, I promised a separate video on how it would affect pricing. To summarize that prior video, the Hull C had both a capacity far beyond any cargo ship in the verse, but also a very limited number of places that it can dock. Places which, on their own, would never have either the supply nor demand to keep those ships filled. Now, we have this in the real world too, and what it results in is a hub and spoke system. Cities and factories across the U.S. send containers to and from, for example, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, and they send container ships and cargo planes across the Pacific. In the same way, locations all around Microtech will send and receive goods from Port Tressler, while Port Tressler sends those massive Hull Cs and larger ships to balance the things that Port Tressler general area makes more of or less of than their local needs. But before I get into prices, I will have to talk about the star map. And one thing that has bugged me most about it for the longest, and it isn't the difficulty of navigation or the lack of important layers of information or the general clunkiness of it, all the other things, all of them valid, that have been complained about the Moby-Glass star map. No, my biggest and longest gripe about it is that it doesn't do this. Now, this animation has been sped up so that 1 second is 1 day's motion, and also that the verse is operating on a 6-to-1 timescale, which it already does for things like sunrises and sunsets. I don't know why the game has gone for so long as it has without planetary motion being finally implemented. I suspect that it is somehow a combination of not being needed for Squadron 42, and that with it affecting so many systems, everybody is hoping that it's somebody else's job. But few things will be as dramatically affected by planetary motion as the dynamic economy, both in terms of passenger and cargo traffic. But we don't have a personal frame for it. We expect the distances, for example, between Los Angeles to Tokyo or Sydney to be the same, always. But imagine instead if plate tectonics worked so fast that they may be where they are now, but in 6 months they might be only a few hundred miles offshore from each other. How would that affect shipping, the price of imported goods, and tourism? In every talk Tony Z has done about the dynamic economy, he has described disruptive events such as piracy or the discovery of new sources of materials causing fluctuations in the economy to keep it from becoming boring and stagnant. And while those things would do that, they aren't necessary in order to avoid a stagnant equilibrium. Just letting the planets do what planets are supposed to do will accomplish plenty, which is good because it means that a safe and stable starter system can still have plenty of economic variability in trade. And if, as I suspect, in the future jump points don't orbit because they have no mass, then various planets and Lagrange points in Stanton will take turns being the gateway to Pyro and the other jump points. So the first obvious truth is that the cost of something is the cost to make it and the cost to get it to you. We saw that recently when a jump in the price of transportation fuels caused by a recovering economy and the instability of Russian supplies caused everything to become more expensive because everything has a transportation component to it. In my prior video, I talked about 3 categories of cargo: commodities, component products, and finished products. Part of my reason for doing that was to make a distinction in pricing behavior. Production nodes will buy commodities from whatever source is the cheapest, including transportation, because commodities are fungible. Component products are somewhat fungible. For example, an electronics company might be able to source screens or processors or memory from someplace else if their current supplier becomes too expensive. Finished products are not fungible, but depending on the product will experience demand elasticity. In other words, if the newest Xbox is way too expensive, you might keep using your old one a little bit longer. If gasoline is way too expensive, you might not take some optional trips and use mass transit, etc. But this works its way backwards down the chain. If the producers of finished products are not building as many, then they're ordering fewer component products, and both they and the finished product producers are buying less raw materials, less commodities. That's why consumer confidence can ripple through an economy, including things that have no direct connection to consumers. And here is where the hub-and-spoke model necessitated by the Hull C pays off. Since everybody is buying and selling at the 4 distribution centers in Stanton, Orison, Tressler, Pagini, and Everest, then all you have to do for an accurate pricing model is to look at the inventory levels at those 4 locations and not have to worry about every single production and demand node. If inventory is running dry, then the distribution center, which would be reflective of the entire local economy, will experiment with higher prices in order to attract more goods. If inventories at the distribution center are piling up, the local economy will experiment with lower prices to move product. However, if either results in it being unprofitable for the production center to operate, either because their costs are now too high or their finished goods being priced too cheap, then they will halt production and the inventory problem solved from a supply rather than a demand standpoint. There is a reason why investors and business forecasters are constantly examining inventory levels at both individual businesses, individual sectors, and the economy as a whole. They are excellent aggregators of economic conditions. But either way, the hub and spoke system, apart from being a necessity from ships like the Hull C, also greatly simplifies the price calculations. Doing a supply and demand from every possible point of supply to every possible point of demand is way more taxing than having to manage 5 distribution centers. Why did I say 5? The 5th is Rowan Station. But first, the planets have to move, because any dynamic economy system without planetary movement is going to have to be redone whenever you stop kicking that can down the road and go ahead and add it. Now, bear in mind again that the motion in this animation is rapidly sped up with 1 day and a second. So implemented in the game, it can be a daily update of static tables of locations and distances, rather than a real-time calculation, which would be unnecessarily complicated. But over a week or a month, it would make noticeable changes in the economy. So it is time to stop kicking that can down the road. So, CIG, stop putting planets in cages where they cannot move. It's cruel. Planets should be free to move about as nature and Sir Isaac Newton intended. Free-range planets must happen and must happen soon. Release the planets from their chains. And now for an update on our giveaways. Right now we have 2 ship giveaways and 1 skill contest. The first is the 10,000 subscriber thank you for the LTI Hull C, that colossal cargo container carrying craft, to be given away when the sea becomes flyable in the verse. And then there's the big ship giveaway for the winner's choice of either the Galaxy Complete, the massive modular mining moving medicine machine, or the brand new big box bargain bazaar called the Merchantman. 1 entry per video for both of those drawings. Just be a member and be entered automatically, or subscribe and comment with the secret word. And the secret word for this video is the 3-word slogan on the leftmost protest sign. Plus, we still have, perhaps for not much longer, our Waiting for 3.18 piloting skills contest for the most amazing landing of a ship Hercules size or larger. Once 3.18 goes live, those entries will be closed. See the video in the description for that. Fly safe, keep it real, and I'll see you in the verse. This is Daniel Raymond for Ray's Guide.